Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much, Serenity Group. This is amazing and an honor to be here today and to be able to share my experience, strength, and hope with all of you. Hello, good evening. My name is AArin R, and I am alcoholic. My sobriety date is February 12th of 2010, and I am here to hopefully share a wonderful story or a crazy story or an intense story, who knows, of what it was like, what happened, and what I'm like now, and what it's all like now, really. Thank you so much, Stephen, again for the plug-in for my husband, Tom, who has definitely made our wonderful AA life on Zoom much more plausible, much more efficient, and able to have wonderful meetings like this here together now as we get to have these. And all over the world, the connections that we get to have now are intense, they're amazing, they're expansive, and have really amplified, I think, our experience in AA now. Uh, and yeah, it's a little hard to call it virtual. I understand, because virtual is the definition of virtual is fake. And this program that we have, what we're sharing here together now, is far from being fake. This is definitely real. I understand it as being extremely real. I have several people that I've been able to work with over these last few years that do not live in the same state as I do, and even the same country as I do, and that have been able to have a real experience in this amazing program. And I appreciate that connection. I appreciate being able to have a way to be able to connect with them beyond just our face-to-face meetings. So thank you again for having me here today, and let's get started. So again, I said that my sobriety date is February 12th of 2010. That is the best guess that we have of what my sobriety date is. You're not going to hear a whole lot of like the normal stuff from me. I like to be extremely not normal. I don't know what normal is, except for a completely delusional idea of what society thinks we should be. And I have found that in this amazing program, I've been able to find who I am and expand on that even further and be able to have that integrity, that self-esteem, and that awareness of understanding who I am. Sometimes it's absolutely terrifying. Sometimes it's really scary. And sometimes it hurts a whole lot to actually have to look at my own humanity and to face these kinds of things. But instead of running from that, like I used to so much, I do have the tools now to be able to face these things. And I know that can sound overwhelming for anybody who's new here. Welcome for being here that are new. Congratulations to all of you. Congratulations to all of us for even being here, really. With time and with not that much time at all. It actually is a big deal to be here. I find it extremely exciting to be able to, because even as the years go on, it's still so imperative, absolutely imperative, to keep AA first in everything that I do. I've found that when I don't put AA first in my life and everything that I do, go to any lengths to get sober, life doesn't seem to go quite as smoothly. Life seems to fall apart. If I try to put other things before AA, they don't make it quite as well. And I try to put my own ideas into stuff and my own good intentions, which I was taught a long time ago that good intentions are a road paved to hell. So even with the best of intentions of my own self-will, which again is always self-will run riot, it never turns out quite right. So if I put AA first in my life, everything else seems to fall in line. Everything else seems to work out, no matter how upside down life may seem or be. And I'll give you a little bit more examples of how that is throughout my journey. So when I got sober, I was not one of those. Again, I said congratulations to all of you that are here now today, because I did not look for the rooms of AA. I did not look for Alcoholics Anonymous. I was not looking for help. I I was destined to die. I really was. And I didn't understand that there was any kind of source of help out there for what I didn't understand was a condition that I had. I had no idea that there was this thing called alcoholism. I had no idea that alcohol was a problem. Um, because my state of mind and where I was at before I got sober was alcohol kept me alive one day at a time. That's where it had finally taken me. And I hadn't taken a single drink until I was 21 years old. I had a very short, well, I don't know if some of you would call it short or not, but it was over 7 years of hard drinking. For some of us, that's kind of short. For me, it was an eternity. Right? But it was for 21 years, I followed the rules, right? I wasn't allowed to drink anything until I was 21. And so I didn't. So I was one of those that tried to follow the rules. I was one of those that tried to obey. I was one of those that tried to fit into society, what society I thought wanted me to be a part of, and how to act and how to be. And at 21 is when, my 21st birthday is the first time I ever got drunk, and I thought it was the best thing in the world, because all before that I was absolutely miserable. So needless to say, alcohol kind of allowed me to throw all of that misery, all of those rules, all of my morals that I think I thought I had, completely out the window. But unfortunately, with all of that, there's this beautiful thing that I actually do have, and it's called a conscience. And every single time I would come to in any of these situations, and in life in general, the more I tried to shove under a rug in my feelings, my emotions, caring about people, I would try to shove it under the rug and not feel it anymore. And I'm an intense feeler. I can feel a lot, and it can be extremely intense for me sometimes. And so if I just drank, that would actually help numb it out a little, and help numb it out enough for me to be able to get through a day without having, an emotional breakdown or a temper tantrum or embarrassing myself, knowledgeably embarrassing myself, as opposed to in a blackout embarrassing myself, because I'm sure I had plenty of those. So, but yes, when I didn't know how to look for help, I didn't know how to look for I didn't know how to say I need help. I had too much self-righteousness was what was all over my inventory. I had too much of that pride. Basically my nose stuck up in the air, thinking that I'm better than all of you and that I couldn't possibly need help, and I'm fine, thank you very much. Nobody understands me, so don't even try. Right? If you came up to me and tried to tell me that alcohol was a problem, I wouldn't have believed you. I wouldn't have understood that alcohol was, only a symptom of what was actually the real issue with me. The real issue with me, of which I fully understood, was that I had a mental problem. I was insane. I knew I was nuts. I absolutely knew I was nuts, because I had the loudness in my head. I had the screaming that went on, and the screaming in my soul, and the pain and agony of feeling anything at all was so incredibly intense for me that I needed alcohol to shut it up, to quiet it down, to survive one day at a time. So if anybody told me that alcohol was my problem, I said, you completely missed the mark. My head is my problem. So when a solution showed up for me, which was at a bar, quite literally, I'm so, so grateful that there are alcoholics out there, sober alcoholics, that are willing to carry this message out into the world, not just the meetings, right? We always want the hand of AA always to be there, no matter what we're doing, wherever we're living, working, breathing, for goodness sakes, to have the hand of AA always to be there. And because of that, that saved my life. That really did save my life. There was no judgment. There was no condemnation. All there was understanding, um, an unconditional love that I had never seen before. You know, somebody had come into the bar, of which I was getting completely sloshed at, and let me know that there was another way to live. And not came out being arrogant or, you know, on a soapbox or anything like that, but it was compassion. It was understanding. A lot of like how the St. Francis prayer says, right? Rather to understand than to be understood. Because the recipient of that is hurting so much. So when that hand of AA reached out for me, it allowed me to see and understand that I wasn't alone. You know, I really thought I was alone in all of this. I really thought that the screaming in my head was just insanity that nobody else understood. I didn't want to go to a doctor and tell them, you know, how insane I was. For one thing, I didn't want to embarrass myself like that. But I also didn't want to be put in a padded room with a straitjacket on or hopped up on a whole bunch of pills that I had no control over of how I felt. I, you know, would rather take the pills of which I knew how I would feel if I took them. That's an outside issue though. But I wanted to be in control of how I felt over things, as if I had any control whatsoever. The delusion, again, of my own mind. But this person that showed up in my life that allowed me to understand that I wasn't alone in this was able to tell me my own secrets, which astounded me. Right? I was speaking to somebody else today, actually, and I was explaining how we try to understand how people feel. We try to give them the benefit of the doubt, but we can't ever say that we know how they feel unless we've been there before. Right? We can't exactly share that camaraderie and that experience with somebody else. And to be able to explain to them what's going on unless we've actually been there, done that before. And that's exactly what this person did for me. He was able to explain how I felt and why. And that blew my mind because I knew somewhat how I felt. I mean, it was mostly like fear and anger. It was basically all I really understood. But to have other words to be able to go along with it, to have an understanding of where I was. And because he was able to tell me these things, was able to tell me exactly how I felt, and then give an explanation as to why I felt that way, I knew in my heart of hearts that he wasn't just blowing smoke, that he was seriously telling me out of his own experience, because nobody else would understand to that degree unless they'd been there, done that. And I listened and I hung on. For dear life did I hang on. To every word he said, I hung on because I needed to survive. I wanted that. I had that, what people call the gift of desperation. I had no idea that's what it was, that it was a gift of desperation. What I saw was hope. There was finally hope in my life, that there was more to this thing than just living one day at a time, surviving one day at a time, hanging on for dear life, white knuckling life one day at a time, which, believe me, is extremely exhausting and not that much fun at all, actually. It can really wear out somebody. Not only that, but when you're living that way, it just continues to compound itself to the point that it really felt like I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe in life. And I didn't feel free. I didn't feel happy. So when hope walked into my life, I wanted to hang on, and I was willing to do whatever it took. I was willing to do whatever it took to get that peace, that serenity, that that passion for life to continue to go forward, you know. And this beautiful person that showed up in my life, I have mentioned, it was a guy. Yes, again, I'm another one of those rule breakers in AA, right? Men with men, women with women. If a woman showed up and tried to tell me these things, I would say that she was just a jealous, crazy woman that was trying to, take my scene or something like that because of the insanity in my mind. But I didn't find men to be challenging at all. So I was able to listen purely out of the actual essence that he was a guy. I wouldn't have been able to hear a woman. The beauty about how the message was delivered to me was beyond just being a male, too. It was the fact that he told me no. I don't know about any of you, or if any of you have ever experienced this before, but when I'm drunk, I'm a lush. And I'm not very much of a woman. Oh, I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm not a woman of integrity. I do not have, I tend to go out with a lot of people, to put it lightly. So, and I was never told no before. I was always told, yes, okay, yeah, let's go have some fun or whatnot. And I was always told that I'll be your friend. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. I know what a friend is, right? Somebody who will pay for my drinks and then I have to give them something in return. And that is exactly how I did my transactions then, when I didn't have enough money to pay for my alcohol. And this person told me no. He said, I have this thing called integrity, and I'm not going to use you like everybody else has because I'm not one of them. And that was another thing that really hooked me, that really made me understand and really believe and trust this new person in my life to a degree that I've never trusted anybody else before, because he didn't treat me like everybody else. He really did have an unconditional love that I'd never seen before, not even from my own parents. I know that sounds crazy for any of you who have children. How can you not unconditionally love your child? My parents don't have that. They've loved to the best of their ability, and unconditional love is not one of them. So this was a new experience that I'd never had before. This was a new hope that I'd never had before. And this was a new guru in my life, a spiritual advisor, somebody who understood me beyond what I thought could ever be understood. And I hung on to that with desperation, like I said. And I followed every direction that was given to me. And it was never, you should do this, or, you better do this. It was, hey, you know what? This is what I did. Since I've been in your place and I've already convinced you that I've been in your place before, this is what I did to get out of that. And it's worked for me. Right. And these were like suggestions in life, the same way that, it's a suggestion to take a parachute with you if you're going to jump out of an airplane. It's still a suggestion. It's still your choice in the matter. And that's something I was taught very early on, right? Everything I do is a choice. But there's consequences to my choices. See, as an alcoholic and an alcoholic in my cups, right? I refuse to look at the consequences to my choices. Even before I started drinking, I refused to look at consequences of my choices. I thought I could have my way however I wanted it, and it was your fault if it didn't go my way. And that has nothing to do with alcohol. That has to do with me being an absolute narcissist. Somebody who was self-will run riot. Just because I started drinking at 21 doesn't mean I didn't have some very bad character defects before then. They didn't just show up when I started drinking at 21. Goodness, no. My mother used to call me willful and disobedient. Just put that on my inventory. But I was able to listen and I was able to follow these suggestions, right? Those heavy suggestions where I really didn't feel like I had a choice. But I knew, and I was learning how I always do have a choice in the matter. Whether I want to follow through with maybe a bad choice and suffer the consequences, or go ahead and choose to do what was suggested to me, even though it was new, different, something I'd never done before, and absolutely terrifying because I didn't know what the results were going to be on the other end. I had that sliver of hope because I had an example in my life now that showed me that, yeah, there really can be a light at the end of the tunnel. Things really can change if you stop doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. How about try something a little different, like what I did, and maybe you'll get the same results that I did. And so I had to take that leap of faith, and I had to take, that jump and hope that I'd get caught on the other side, right? Just maybe this will work. And I would follow through on some of these suggestions, and they came out better on the other end. And the more that I followed these suggestions and the more that I followed, that sponsored direction, life got better. I started getting my head back. And again, there are no rules in AA, but if there were, I broke them all. I did not stop drinking to start working steps. I didn't. I was never told by my sponsor to stop drinking at any time. I was never told by my sponsor to delete all the phone numbers that I had in my phone. Told you, when I was drinking, I was a lush. I was told, I was never told that I had to stop any other behaviors at all. All I was given was certain suggestions on how to change my behavior if I wanted to change. If I wanted to continue down the path of my misery, of the screaming in my head, of practicing trying to kill myself, by sticking glass in my arm, I was more than welcome to continue to that behavior. But if I wanted to change and I didn't want to continue down that jumping off point, then here are some suggestions on how to change that. And I started doing these suggestions before I stopped drinking. I started doing these suggestions before I stopped other bad behaviors, right? One of my first amends was in December of 2009, right? You can see my sobriety date's February 2010. My first amends that I made was actually done in December of 2009. And that amends was suggested by my spiritual guru. That's what I called him in the beginning because I didn't understand what a sponsor was, right? He was my spiritual guru because this is a program of a spiritual experience. It is a spiritual solution to a mental problem. I understood I had a mental problem. The fact that I got to embrace a spiritual program was so exciting. So my first amends was actually to show up at my job that I had at the time, properly dressed, right? Not with a low cut top or mini skirt or anything like that. Show up at my job with my job description, my legal job description, and do just that. Don't do any outside what would you call them? Excursions, outside requests, because when that job actually was the only job I could hold while I was still drinking, because they would allow me to drink during lunch hour, and when I came back, I would be sloshed, and they would take advantage of me. They would take me to the back room, and they would have their way with me. So my first amends was to show up at that job. It was not to quit. It was actually to show up at my job and do my job as a woman of integrity. Don't get drunk during lunch hour because I needed to still have my head when I went back to work. I was welcome to get drunk after work, but I was told to keep my head while I was still at work so that I could be a woman of integrity while I did my job and to just do my job. And if they were to ask me to do anything outside of the job description, I was to say, where is that in my job description? And point to the piece of paper that was sitting next to me with my job description on it. And that was my first amends. And I was fired on Christmas Eve of 2009. I know. Oh my goodness. Shocking. Why would, a sponsor? Yeah. Oh, it was through text message too. They didn't even have the guts to be able to tell me in person or say, hey, get out of here. We don't want you if you're not going to give us what we want, what we really want. Right. They didn't have the guts to be able to do that. They had to do it through text message on Christmas Eve, as if that would actually dagger me in some way or another. But no, the plan was, first of all, was how much do I trust my sponsor? Am I willing to do whatever is suggested, even if I don't know what the outcome is? And the second thing was what the outcome really was. I got to apply for unemployment because I didn't quit. If I had quit, then I wouldn't have been able to apply for unemployment. And it still took me 3 more months to be able to find a job that would actually take me on, because it took me 3 more months to detox off of everything else that I was on. So the benefit of following my sponsor's direction was the fact that I was able to collect unemployment while I looked for a legitimate job. And it gave me the time to be able to do that and to be able to continue to work the steps and find a way to finally go, I don't want to drink. I don't want to do these things. Because during that time that I was writing inventories, which I don't know were inventories. I was told to journal. And that was it. That was an inventory. Basically, write down everything that's screaming in my head. Right? We've got to take off that top layer first in order to get down to the causes and conditions. And that's exactly what I did. I did a step 4 by journaling. Write down the crazy. I can do that. That was my level of understanding. I can write down the crazy. And I didn't read my first big book until 2 years that I was sober because I couldn't read. I couldn't read in the beginning. My head was so loud and so insane that if you sat me down with a book and just read it to me, it would go over my head. It wouldn't even go into my head. I wouldn't understand what you were talking about. I would say that doesn't apply to me. I don't know what you mean. And it was all about alcoholism, which I didn't understand was what my problem was. Right? So my spiritual guru got me into action, right? Which is where the solution lies. It's all about the action. So what if we read the big book, right? It is a manual to life. I have learned and understood now that all of the answers are there, but so what? They don't mean anything unless we use them. They don't mean anything, just like, a Bible sitting on the shelf. Big deal. It's a book. I can read it and fall asleep. But if I don't apply the principles that are being taught, then it means nothing to me. See, this is how we get to live now. We have an amazing 12 steps that have been applied in this book that are just simple process of action on how to deal with life now. How amazing is that? That has blown my mind. To this day, it still blows my mind on how much it is just step by step. Here we go. This is how we can actually deal with life on life's terms. And this is a formula on how to have a spiritual experience. I mean, it's so cut and dry. And I would love for it to be, and again, I am one of those type of people that love things to be black and white. And the steps are very much black and white. In fact, the ink is black on a white page. It is so black and white, right? And it's so simply cut out and laid out for us. And it is such a blessing to be able to actually be an alcoholic. Again, though, we don't have to be alcoholics in order to have a spiritual experience, right? I didn't know I was an alcoholic for these steps to work. They still worked for me, even though I was applying them, not realizing that I was an alcoholic. I didn't take step 2 until 2 years into my sobriety. Or step 1, sorry. I already took step 2 because I had that hope that something was there that was bigger than me that could help me out of my insanity. Right. And as I worked these steps, as I wrote down my inventories, as I took the insanity that I'd written down to my spiritual guru, and he helped me process them, figure out what was my part in it. What kind of choices would I like to make from here on out? Do I want to continue making the insane choices, or do I want to change those choices and maybe try what he did instead? Right. That's steps 6 and 7 right there. 8 and 9 is applying those changes, actually doing them. And that's all it took. And as these happened, my mind got to be quieter, and I got to actually listen to things now. Right. I didn't have to turn up my headphones so much that I had to buy a new pair every week because I couldn't stand listening to the screaming going on in my head. So I had to listen to screaming music instead. Right. Just to distract me a little so that I could see straight. No, these things actually got quiet enough in my head where I have to start to dig and look for things to process through these steps. And as that happened, I realized I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to drink and lose this, because every single time I drank, I'd black out and then I'd do something stupid. And I don't want to do that. I have a head now that I want to be actually a part of maybe. I mean, it's still broken. I can vouch that it's even still broken now, but I'm not cured of alcoholism, right? It's progress, not perfection. I am not an example of perfection in any way whatsoever, and my husband can vouch for that. But I do have progress in this thing. And as I progressed, I learned that I didn't want to black out anymore. And I figured out with my broken brain that if I drank, I'd black out, and then I might lose the sanity that I have gained. Therefore, if I don't drink, I won't black out, and I'll be able to keep the sanity that I have gained. Oh my goodness, that was like the coolest thing ever, right? That was my process. And on that point, I had put down the drink. I don't remember the exact day. I don't remember when that happened, where I woke up and had that epiphany of, I can't do this anymore. I need to keep my sanity that somehow is happening. And so the way we were actually able to figure out my sobriety date was when I could actually pee in a cup clean and get a real job, which was April of 2010. And we counted backwards and then flipped a coin. So February 12th is where it landed on, and that's what we're going to stick with. Close enough. So that is how we have come to somewhat understand. It's what we've been able to celebrate, and it has worked since. So as I continue to work this amazing program, right, I've been able to blossom in understanding some of life, being able to face life. You know, I learned that that's one of the most terrifying things, was to actually face life. And these steps give me that ability to process everything that goes through life, however it's meant to be, right? It gives me the grace and the dignity to know that I'm not God. I'm not perfect. I am human. I am capable of mistakes. I am capable of redemption. I am capable of forgiveness. I am capable of love. And these are things that I've never been able to understand before. You know, I am still powerless. To this day, I am still powerless. But I have a God that is bigger than this now. And I have a connection with that higher power, of which I could only have dreamed of, and what I have craved my whole life to have a connection with a power that loves me so much and will take me through anything and help me through anything. My God is always bigger than this. And I'm so grateful for that. Because without these steps, there's no way I'd be able to have that connection. Because my self-centeredness, my narcissism, my insanity get in the way of me being able to connect with my higher power. The loudness in my head will scream louder than my intuition can or will. So I have to do these steps. I have to continue, because every day I get to be self-centered, self-will run riot, an alcoholic, human. And every day I get to remember that I have a program now. I have a way out. And like I said, it doesn't turn life into puppy dogs and kittens, although I do love kittens. Stephen, you're absolutely right. We are big kitten fans, definitely. But it doesn't turn it all into all of that wonderful stuff. Yes, life does get beautiful, right? We have a disease of perception, and how I perceive life is very limited. That's why I need the experience of being able to do 12-step work, being able to have the experience through my sponsees of those who I get to work with, have the experience of my sponsor to be able to share that with me, to be able to have the experience of hearing all of your shares as well, so that I can have the different perspective on different situations of how that happens and what's going on, because mine's limited. I've only got these two eyes. I can only see certain things a certain way. So I need all of your experience too, to be able to see the difference in this world and how beautiful it really can be. It also says in this beautiful manual of life that we get to have, some of you call it the big book. It says that our God is able to match calamity with serenity. I hang on to that, desperately hang on to that, because I told you I can feel a lot. I can feel deeply. I have a lot of emotions that go on too. The fact that I can feel that deep means that I can feel very greatest of the opposite side of that spectrum as well. So as much pain and sorrow as I have to feel, or that I get to feel, because it is still a blessing to be able to feel things in life, then my God gets to match that with serenity, with peace, with love, with joy. I share these in meetings because I need to hear it too sometimes, to remind myself that there is an upside even to the downsides. And that's why we have this thing called life, and that it gets to be an adventure to be able to live life now. I had to remind myself sometimes that even on the downsides, that it's a blessing to be able to have this, so that the reward on the other side will be greater. And I know it will be. And I love that. And sometimes I got to remember that, so that I can get through whatever trial and tribulation that I need to go through. You know, and these experiences are blessings. It doesn't feel like a blessing in the moment. I'll be honest, it really doesn't. But my God would never give me more than I can handle. And the more he gives me to handle, the bigger the things he thinks that I can handle, the more I know that he's trusting me through a process of which I can be an example, that I can grow from, I can learn from, I can expand from. Because this program is all about continuing to grow in understanding and effectiveness. Right? I can't just maintain my program at all. I can't maintain my spiritual condition, because that's like treading water. Right? It can only coast downhill. I have to grow in understanding and effectiveness. I have a progressive disease called alcoholism. And my alcoholism is going to progress. If I could progress faster than it, then I can always stay ahead of it. That means I have to continue to grow, though. That means the bigger challenges that happen in life, I better show up. I better trust in my God, that my God's bigger than this, and then I'm going to make it through. Because if I don't, and those challenges do happen in life, because they will, trust me, they will, it could take me out. And I don't want that. I appreciate the blessings that God gives me and puts in front of me. I may not appreciate them in the moment. Progress, not perfection. I am not perfect at this yet. But I do have that hope because I have, for the last 13 years, my God has not failed me. The last 13 years of working this program, my higher power has not failed me. I have failed me by not showing up. I have failed me by not putting my program first. I have failed me and my husband if I don't do that. I have to put AA first in everything that I do, or else everything else falls apart. There was a rather big challenge that happened when I was at year 7, 6 years ago. Our house burned down. We were at a meeting. We went to a meeting. We came back, and our road was blocked off, and I had just that gut tear of one of my biggest fears. Absolutely. I jumped out of the car, ran up the street. I don't remember the scream, but I heard the scream that came from me when I saw our house being burnt down. And the first things that came out of my mouth is, "Where's our kitty? Where's our kitty?" So that was our precious family member that was in our house. She had no way out. Her name was Juju. A precious, beautiful, God-blessed creature. She taught me meditation. I'd stick my face in her belly and she'd purr. It was some of the best moments of my life, being able to be in the now. My first understanding of being in the now. It's such a blessing. Absolutely. And it would be so easy to curse God. It would be so easy to tell him that he made a mistake. My God doesn't make mistakes. Not even me. Because sometimes I like to think I'm a mistake. Called self-pity. I'm not a mistake. My God doesn't make mistakes. Because if I think I know better than God, then I'm trying to be God. And page 86 tells me all about how I'm not allowed to do that. Morbid reflection, divorce from self-pity, dishonesty, self-seeking motives. First thoughts that come into my mind in the morning. That's why it says on awakening, I gotta be divorced. So how does a book that was written over 80 years ago know exactly what my first thoughts are in the morning? This is an amazing spiritual program, and this book knows me better than I know myself. If it wasn't for this program, Alcoholics Anonymous, I wouldn't have been able to survive the loss of our kitty. If it wasn't for having a trust in a higher power, knowing that my God is bigger than this, and that I'm not God, because of this program of understanding that process and putting a trust in a higher power to trust God, clean house, help others. I have to trust God first. There's no way I'd be able to survive the hardships that do happen in life. And it's more than just being able to survive them. Right? I survived life before, very badly, but I was surviving it. It's being able to embrace it. I am not terrified of that experience anymore. I am not terrified of the loss of our kitty. I'm not terrified of life. It is scary. But one of the principles behind this program is courage. Right? We even ask for courage in our serenity prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change. Courage to change the things we should change. Right? And we have to ask for that because it is terrifying. It is scary. Life is full of fear. So we have to have courage in order to face these things. And where are we to get that courage? I only understand how to get that courage through Alcoholics Anonymous, by doing the deal, by actually showing up, facing these fears, and accepting whatever outcome it may be. As long as I put my best foot forward and know that I would, in my heart of hearts, that I did the best I could with what I had, which usually is not always the best looking all the time. It certainly isn't perfect. It is progress. Then I know I can get through it. And as for my sponsor, that amazing, wonderful, spiritual guru that showed up in my life is still in my life today. Absolutely in my life today. He is my amazing husband sitting right next to me right now. I know. If there are rules in AA, I broke that one too. He did tell me no. He did tell me that I needed to have integrity. He did tell me that I needed to be a woman of, dignity and respect. And through these steps, I was able to gain that. Through these steps, I fought to be a best friend with him. I wanted to be able to stand next to him, to be a woman of integrity, and reciprocate the friendship and the love that he gave me. And we did that. And this amazing program allows us to grow together. And, we grow together or we grow apart. Either way, we're going to grow because the only constant in this world is change. So we grew together and we ended up getting married. And he's still my sponsor. Just because we got married doesn't mean I need to get somebody else to tell what, my deepest, darkest secrets are. No, he knows everything about me. All of my deepest, darkest secrets. And the amazing beauty about that, I get that it's not for everybody, although Erwin and Sharon seem to be loving it. I just love that. Oh, you guys are adorable. Absolutely. The beauty about this is that I don't have it in the back of my mind. Oh, but if he knew this about me, he wouldn't love me anymore. That is not in my head at all. That has been squashed because as much as he does know about me, he still hasn't run away with his head on fire or screaming, which he has every right to. And he hasn't done it. I try not to bring anything to him that will make him do that. Again, I'm not perfect. Progress, not perfection. I am human. He is an amazing example of what true forgiveness really looks like. And I am in awe of him. Absolutely in awe of him. And I continue to fight to try to be that wonderful best friend, that wonderful wife, that wonderful everything I can possibly be of integrity to stand next to him so that he can be proud of me as a sponsee, as a best friend, and as his wife. And this is what the program of Alcoholics Anonymous has been able to give to us. And for that, I am so, so grateful. I want to thank you all again so much for having me here today. I hope I was able to carry a message of depth and weight to all of you. This has been a blessing and an honor. And I hope it carries through the ages as well. Thank you again so much. And you guys have a wonderful evening.